Hello, hello, hello again, my lovelies. This is Loose Lips. This is all about good vibes, and we're on our third chat of the day. And this one I'm really, really excited about. We're going to be speaking with the man himself, Mark Chapman, aka Chappers. Going to be getting stuck into his career. Also, not only that, I want to really ask about things about the behind the scenes of how shows like Match of the Day, iconic shows of Match of the Day are created. So I'm really excited to speak with him. Well done for everyone who's come through so far. And Mark's in the group as well. He's sending a request, so technology is about to align us. Here we go. Yes, how are you?
It works. It works. I'm good. Are you?
I'm very well. This is surreal, mate. Thank you firstly for agreeing to do this.
Pleasure. Pleasure. Good stuff that you're doing.
Thank you, brother. I just feel like in these times, it's all about spreading the positive vibe. I know there is a severity out there, but I just think if we can help people take the mind off the reality that we're in, and connect with people around the world and just celebrate people's stories. A lot of people have been reaching out and saying it's doing its part, so that's what I'm looking forward to
Good.
do. Really.
Pleased for you. Pleased for you.
Nice one. Well, also, anybody who's coming through to the actual chat, if you've got any questions, just put them in the comments, and if I can work them in, I definitely will. But I've got a few as well. And the first one that I want to say is that one thing, I'm a presenter as well. I do stand-up comedy and I do DJing. But what I really respect about yourself as a presenter is just how versatile you are amongst many different platforms, from radio to TV, but also the different manner of the sports as well. It's staggering. I think people maybe don't understand or give the credit the amount that you actually do.
Well, people in the main tend to be very nice, so that's always quite good in the main, I say. And I kind of grew up in an era really in the 80s where if you were a sports presenter, then you did all sports really, and whether that's I'm not for 1 minute comparing myself to any of these, but um, Des Lynam or Dickie Davis or David Coleman or Helen Rollison, Jim Rosenthal, then they would do a whole variety of sports. You were a sports presenter, and um, that's kind of what I've always, I don't just have an interest in one sport. I grew up going to watch lots of different sports, listen to lots of different sports, watch lots of different sports on telly. So I've always thought that if I just did one sport, I'd go slightly mad, really. And I'm also a big believer in that what you learn from one sport, you can then take into another sport. And the more you deal with lots of people in a whole variety of sports, the more they want to know about other sports as well, and they tap into other sports all the time. So it just seems kind of common sense to me.
I think so, but I don't see it being done quite a lot. I'd say that one of the reasons why I admire yourself as well is back in the day you do something with Comedy Dave? Like, this is going
Yeah, well,
way
I
back.
mean, I was on radio. I was on
So
Radio One for 10 years, but I always did the sport for Radio One, and
yeah,
then
yeah.
I kind of I did sort of weekend fill-in shows and the odd. Well, I was going to say music shows, as in I hit the button to start the track. I wouldn't say I was a music aficionado, but
But you
um,
kept yourself relevant. You were always popping up in different areas when your name.
well,
I
I
always
think
remembered the name.
I think you've got to try different things. That's I mean you've just described to us all the different stuff that you do, and I kind of think that's you've got to do that, mate. Certainly more and more in the media, you've got to do it. And also, what's the harm in trying? What's the
Yeah.
harm in giving it a go and having a challenge? If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. But if you say yes and give it a go, then who knows where that may lead or what might happen with it. And various things that I've done throughout my career have led to some amazing opportunities.
Got a question coming through here saying, have you always enjoyed rugby league, or is it
Yeah.
something you only started watching as you present it?
What's
didn't even know
what's
you were involved with the rugby league.
yeah, what's really interesting about that question? Well, it's twofold, really. Yes, I've always loved rugby league, and the first time I went to a game was on New Year's Day in probably '85, when I was in my first year at secondary school, and my mate was a big rugby league fan, big Warrington fan. So he took us to Warrington on New Year's Day, him and his dad. And just to be awkward, because that's what you do at that age, him and his dad supported Warrington, and me and a mate supported Wigan, who were the opposition at the time, just to wind them up. And then I went to university in a very big rugby league town in Hull. So I've followed Hull. I went to when they won the Challenge Cup in Cardiff. I went and watched Hull then, which was fantastic, and a great day when they beat Leeds there. And again, it's going back to what we were saying about if you don't ask or if you don't give it a go, who knows what might happen. And I sat in a meeting with someone at BBC Sport when I was still at Radio 1, wanting to do other things, wanting to do more sport, and realizing that I needed to move on eventually. And I said to them, yeah, by the way, I love my rugby league. And from that, I got the opportunity to stand in for Clare Balding when she couldn't do it. And that's kind of how that evolved. But I always think that I wouldn't, I try not to present stuff that I don't really enjoy, because I don't want to fake my enthusiasm for it.
I understand that. And then I wonder then, leading on to that, when you're developing your sort of career and you get given the opportunity to be involved with something like Match of the Day, is that something that is presented to you, or again, is it in a meeting and you're like, you know what, that's the goal, and then it came to you?
No, that was offered to me, not that wasn't a sit down, I'd like to present Match of the Day too. I was doing various things. I've been doing 5 Live Sport on the Monday Night Club, and I had been doing a lot of Final Score as well at the time, so the Saturday afternoon results thing. And then I got a phone call to say, would I take over Match of the Day too? So yeah. So so it was literally a phone call. And the most amazing thing about that, which is really important, I'm not sure I've ever kind of said this a lot, but it's really important, and particularly because, by the way, I've just seen that question. Is it true you support both United and Hull City? That's not true. That's not true. I have a soft spot for Hull because I went to Hull, as I was just explaining, but you can't support 2 football teams. And yeah, and because this is a very positive podcast and all of that, Instagram Live, one of the first people I spoke to after I got offered the Match of the Day 2 job was Colin Murray, who was coming off Match of the Day 2, who was the most incredibly generous, magnanimous, lovely man about me taking over from him. And we go back a very long way. Used to work at Radio 1 together, still work at 5 Live together. And the way he was over that shift of presenter of that show was absolutely class. He was an absolute class act, and I will never forget that.
I love that. That could be an exclusive as well, one of the first exclusives we've had. Before we go into Match of the Day, because I'm really interested in the background of the green screen setup. It only dawned on me, I think, 3 weeks ago when you put a post up that it is a green screen. I was like, of course it's a green screen. But only this year
wasn't a green screen until this year. So the studio, so the studio changed this year. So nothing. So it is. The desk is real, and the chairs are real, and everything else is you can see, but we can't.
So let's continue with this then. So when you're sat at the desk, so when you're doing the actual analysis of the games, is that happening? Are you shooting it in what we call as live? So that's sometimes.
No, it is. No, it is live. It's
live.
Shooting
it as live.
That goes out. Live. That goes live every week we do it live, because you never know when something might happen. So if at 10:40 at night somebody decides to sack their manager, which could very well happen, and a couple of times they have a manager has been sacked at 8:30, 9 o'clock, then you need to react to it. So it's absolutely live, yeah.
So you're literally there all day watching the games, studying the games. You've got the production team editing the packages, coming up with what you're going to speak about, and then
we watch the games in an office, all of us together. The two pundits, me, the production team, a guy putting the analysis together, and from the moment the first game kicks off at 2:00 now, all the way through until 10:30, it's a continuous process with a break for food. And I mean, it's only watching football, so it's not the hardest job in the world. But constantly talking through the game, they might say something. I'll then say, "Oh, that's interesting. Could we develop that?" And so on and so forth. Or they might want to pick a player out, and then over the course of the day, then that analysis is built. I don't tend to watch it until about 9:00, and then I watch it with the pundits in an edit suite, and then I ask them why they might have a certain clip in, or why, or maybe it's a little bit too long, or okay, well, if they're going to show that, then I tell you what, I might want to know this off the back of it, and it's built, and then there's a final edit, and then when we go into the studio, they watch their analysis again before we then do it live. They can watch it as many times as they want before we go live, and depending on the pundit, depending on how comfortable they are, how long they've done it, how they like to work, because every pundit likes to work in a different way. I might tell them what I might ask, or or what my follow-up might be. But sometimes, if they're really comfortable and experienced, I might not, because that actually makes it more fun. And what they know that I'll never land them in it. I'll never throw them under a bus. My job as a sports presenter is there to make them look as good as they possibly can be. That's your job as a sports presenter, is to make your pundits sing, not literally sing, but be great.
I think that's one of your strongest assets, is the way that you bring the guest or the pundits in. It really does give them a level up, and there's good back and forth banter as well. And that's why I wondered if it's maybe, what do you actually give to them, so that because it feels a lot more organic than staged.
Well, I give them little bits, but then also, they aren't reading off a script. They've planned what they're going to do, and then they might throw something in that they haven't mentioned at all throughout the whole day, and then you go, right, okay, and what they say then dictates what I might then say next. I mean, that's the that. I'm not, I don't know everything about the business or whatever, but my view of doing a good interview is actually not to have any questions. I might have some facts and stats, but until I hear, as I always say, until I hear the first answer, how do I know what the next question is going to be?
Well, this is exactly it. This is exactly it. So when you were just saying then that some might be you might just lean in and say, I might ask this, I might ask that. That was just an interesting angle, because I always felt that the way that your style is, it is quite responsive to what's been said.
Yeah, but then you might have someone who is doing their first 2 or 3 shows, and they might be slightly more nervous, and therefore you need to guide them through it a little bit more. And I think that's kind of really, I don't think we as viewers, and I'll have done it as a viewer myself, realise quite how nerve-wracking it is for some of them, and then at the same time, I have seen pundits over the years, they hear that, but as we've said, it's live, and they hear that theme tune, and then they grip the side of the chair, because it's like, oh, crikey, So you sort of, some of them, you manage through it, and if you go, look, I won't hide what I'm going to ask you next. This will be the second question, and this will be the third question, because I want them at ease. I don't want them uncomfortable. I don't want them to look good as well. I don't want them to have a crap show.
There's a couple questions that have come through saying, who is your favourite pundits? And I don't know if you're allowed to say, but what I'd like to ask off the back of that, maybe not favourite, but who do you find that you have the best rapport with? That's probably a better way. But then also, is there any current Premier League footballers that when they hang up the boots, you think would make good pundits as well? That's what I'd like to ask.
All right, well, let's deal with that one first. I think Mikel Antonio could be a really, really good pundit. I think he's really interesting. I think Troy Deeney could be a really, really good pundit. I I've done a couple of things with Tom Heaton recently, and I really liked him from a goalkeeper's perspective. I think what's interesting quite a lot of the time now is you can sort of see footballers thinking earlier and earlier about whether they want to do punditry, and then they're properly starting to learn about it and try a few. I mean, I would say to them, just try a few different things, and then we'll see where not you might prefer telly and so on and so forth. So I think there are a few out there who are starting to think about what they want to do. Someone's mentioned Charlie Austin. You can see how people are interviewed, or how they if they make themselves available for interviews an awful lot, then they're obviously thinking that way. And then if they'll do an interview, Ben Foster recently started to do an awful lot. So I think that's really interesting with Ben Foster. As far as the pundits I like working with, then, oh my God. There are none that I don't. I know that's a really boring answer, but I have, James Milner. That's quite a good shout from Ian there. I think James Milner could be a really interesting one. I've tried a couple of times to get James Milner in, actually, but I think it's quite difficult at the moment if your team's going for the title to come and be to come and be a pundit on the show. I laugh with them all really in very different ways. I love working with Righty, obviously. I really like working with Alan. They've all got. Micah has been a breath of fresh air to work with because he just laughs all the time. But there are none where I go, I don't want to do this. They're decent. They're decent people, really.
And we're going to sort of come on to the NFL show because it's incredible, and the enthusiasm of how you present that show is one of the biggest reasons why it attracts a lot more people into the game over here. But when you were doing the Super Bowl coverage and you had like a behind-the-scenes show on the NFL show before, you were speaking with an ex-American football player who was sat down with you all, and he was saying that there's some form of like courses that are going through for players that are coming to the end of the career and are actually interested in getting to the punditry and almost going on like a workshop or a course. Like, do you think that the way that the UK Premier League football is getting, that we could start seeing that built into the? I
would do that. I would absolutely do that. And people sort of, people look at the NFL shows and interviews you do with NFL players. That was Nate Burleson that in the Super Bowl preview. That was an unbelievable chat. Was that?
It was
and that was another one where I had no idea where we were going to go, and then he took it down that route, and it was like, wow, okay, fantastic. But yeah, I think there's a greater path maybe for them over in the NFL. And I think partly we're trying to catch up with that over here. But there is still the belief a lot of the time that, you can stick a player down and they can just talk about the game and in front of the TV camera or a radio mic, and they should be able to do it like that. And they shouldn't. And actually, I think, sometimes we need to be a bit more patient with them and give them time to grow into their role as a pundit. And actually, we as broadcasters, I think, probably do need to give them more support and more training and more help. And if they're playing, and this isn't just in football, I think this is in a variety of sports, the more we can work with them whilst they're still playing might then help them as a pundit when they then retire.
So let's step to the NFL show, because it must be. I mean, how does the schedule work with that?
Okay, so that is pre-recorded. So we pre-record that on a Tuesday, and we pre-record 2 shows a week. So we do both shows on a Tuesday, and they are recorded off the back of a lot of WhatsApp conversations with the producers and between OC, Jason, and myself about the games we're going to cover, the analysis that we're going to do. And I think we have properly, I think the analysis that the boys have done has gone to a different level in many ways this season. And that is not just down to OC and Jason, that's also down to Mark Golly and Alistair, who do the who've put the analysis together and watched so many of the games. And that, again, is a collaborative process to try and, educate and have a bit of fun with it. That's the aim of the analysis on that.
I think it's really done well in that example because it is quite bite-sizing the information that it is given, and almost like I love the fact that you all tend to want to play yourself up in those roles. So if the question's asked, it feels like you're allowed to be asked. I think you respect that the audience are at all different stages of what they know, but I like the fact that there's a lot of callback and in-jokes as well.
But what the whole idea is to try and make that as inclusive as possible, right? And that is inclusive whether you've never watched NFL before, whether you watch a lot of NFL, whether you've watched lots of our show and get some of the jokes, whether you haven't watched hardly any of our shows, then hopefully there's still something in there that might make you laugh, or something that you might watch in the game or the analysis and think, oh, I might return to this show. It tries to be as inclusive as possible. And that means that there will be diehard fans of the sport that probably don't like it because they might just think we're just having too much of a laugh with it, and or the analysis isn't up there. But if we bring in all new fans to the game and then they go off and enjoy it to a really high level, then I kind of feel that is job done. What I don't want to do is I don't want to exclude anybody that might just have dropped in and watched it for the first time, and I don't want to patronise people who love the game. I'm hoping there's a kind of balance there. But we're 5 years into it. 4 or 5 years into it, and going back to pundits needing to grow. I would hazard a guess, if you watch the first 18 months of that, I was dreadful on that show for 18 months because I wanted to prove to people that I knew what I was talking about. Whereas, which is the worst thing you can do. Whereas now I feel much more relaxed about asking a stupid question because I probably know the answer anyhow. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And I think as well, there's a solidarity between you all. Maybe there's a proper more of a camaraderie now that you know each other and you know each other's inner workings, and each of you have your own like character step outs, the way that Jason sort of plays himself up, and she comes across as cool, and yourself who's sort of like maybe doesn't know but does know. Like it just works. And I think what I really love about it is that when I started getting into NFL, one of my best friends was into it, but I just didn't have the patience to really understand the game. I really started watching your show, and it was the banter and the camaraderie that you were having that made me like, there's something in this, and I really like what you're about from a presenter background as well. I really love the dynamic of it. And then, I'd say this season I really thoroughly get it. I get it. I get the players. I understand the designs. I understand the players to look out for. And I enjoyed this season so much, and it turned out to be one of the best seasons that there's been, apparently. So
brilliant. Then I sort of not that's down to what, but I kind of feel job done with you. Then that's brilliant. Then that's kind of what we set out to do. I mean, the important thing for me now is what we do with it next and where we go with it next, and you can't sort of sit still with it, and you don't want to change too much, but there are things that we have to go again, and there's more story. If we weren't in the situation that we were in now, do we do something on the draft? We probably should be doing something on the draft now, but obviously in this situation it's now impossible to do that. But we're constantly excuse me, the producer, the analysis guys, OC Jason, we feel very much that this is a long-term thing, and we want to improve. We want to go again, probably very much like, head coaches or football coaches or whatever. It's like, we're not sitting still. Right, what can we do next with it?
What's it like at a Super Bowl? Can you even describe or sum it up? It looks insane.
The last one, I mean, I've enjoyed every single one that I've been to, but the last one was as much fun as I have had doing any sporting event live. It's it's a challenge as a presenter because it's 4 hours of not knowing what's going to happen, and the Americans can call a commercial break with just 10 seconds to the break. So all of a sudden it's like, oh, crikey, right, we're on, what we're going to talk about. So there's a challenge from that. It was an outdoor Super Bowl in the sun in Miami between two fresh teams in many ways. No disrespect to the Patriots, but we didn't have the Patriots for the first time in a while. And we felt that we were also there for Mahomes' first Super Bowl, and that could be a legendary moment because he could go on and dominate for a decade.
Well, the way they did in that fourth quarter, 100%.
And the way they did in the fourth quarter, and just everything about it, I've got goosebumps now talking about it. Everything about it felt incredibly special from the moment we arrived that day, and the halftime was fantastic and just a bit of a laugh. And those halftime shows sometimes in the stadium.
Oh, froze a bit. One sec, see if he comes back to us.
Hello?
Sorry, Chappers, you froze just as you were saying those halftime shows.
The halftime shows sometimes don't work in the stadium because they're designed for telly, but this one properly worked in the stadium. The Rock introducing the teams, just so much about it just worked, and it just gave us a buzz from start to finish. And when you were as a media go and present that, by the way, everything runs to the second, everything is slick. Everybody wants to help. Everybody's pulling in the same direction to make it the best event they possibly can make it. Nothing working on it is a problem. Everything runs so smoothly, and that doesn't happen at very many events. I'm honoured to have done. I've done 7, I think, 6 of them in America. I did 1 from back here. They're the most amazing things to cover. Most amazing things to cover.
Do you feel the pressure on that? Do you feel the pressure on the Super Bowl?
No, I love it. I absolutely. It gives me butterflies. When they ran the opening sort of montage thing with Jason and OC in this car, and then this kind of like 80s music intro stuff. I was like punching Jason on the leg underneath the desk, going, "Here we go, here we go, here we go. This is it." It's just amazing. It's 4 hours of not knowing what you're going to talk about with 3 friends, because Mike Carson does it as well, and this amazing sport which we love, and finding that balance between some of the texts and the tweets that you read out and analysing the game and.
Oh, sorry, you went again just to analysing the game.
Oh, yeah, analyse the game. It's just everything about it. It just gives me butterflies doing it, but in a good way.
Now, I know you've given us your time, and I'm grateful for that, and I won't keep you too long. There's a couple of things I'd like to sort of ask, and one of them is maybe a side that people don't really get to know about and respect or have a thought to. And you mentioned final score before, and I think of names like Jeff Stelling. Just can you talk us through something like that, where you've got 40 plus games, you've got producers in your ear telling you go to this game, go to that game? Like, can you talk us through just the process of that?
Yeah, I mean, if you do a round the ground show, final score, or Soccer Saturday, or when we do a round the grounds on 5 Live, you're trying to keep across the screens on which you've got featured games. You've got people in your ear telling you goal at wherever it may be and go to it. And for me, I've got a whole load of stats in front of me with goal scorers and other little facts and stats as you go along. So you're trying to sort of juggle 3 or 4 different things, but you get used to it. And actually having someone in your ear when you're doing TV and radio is now for me, it feels the most normal thing in the world. And actually what's harder is if people stop talking in your ear, because if it stop talking in your ear, I think I think something's gone wrong. So it's a bit like a comfort blanket, I suppose. But you don't only hear people talking to you; you hear them all talking to each other about what graphic to put up or where they're going to go next or which camera they need to cut up or whatever it is. So you have the general hubbub, and then it's just about sort of tuning in and out of the stuff that is relevant to you. So, but it becomes incredibly normal.
Do you find that there's a lot of unsung heroes then with the production team behind it?
Oh yeah, God yeah. I mean, hopefully in the chat of the NFL and Match of the Day 2, and that Monday Night Club, it's a team effort to put it together. It requires really good producers with really good ideas and dedicated to make the best shows that they possibly can. I mean, if you look at the moment on a Saturday afternoon, without the live football, we're on 5 Live. We're doing a show called The Guest List for 2 hours, and some of the people that I am talking to is remarkable, but that's down to producers and reporters and correspondents using their contacts to bring these people in, and then I interview them and talk to them, and I get the tweets going, "Oh, that was amazing, amazing." It's like, well, yeah, but I wouldn't be talking to them if it wasn't for my producer or my correspondent or whatever who's brought them in. So every show is a team effort, absolutely.
Do you think that, especially with both sports, football and American football, in the analysis, can the graphics get too much, or do you feel like we're going to see another evolution in the graphics as well? Not the graphics, but I think of the 3D one where there's the striker and it swooshes round and sees it from another angle.
I'm not a fan of overcomplicating things. I think you can have a graphic and the presenter can give the information. You probably don't need much else. But I think, I don't actually see Final Score because I'm on the radio at the same time. But in general, I think you can overcomplicate things by putting too much stuff on the screen. Definitely.
Perfect. Well, I think I'm like happy that I've managed to ask a lot of the questions that I've asked. If there's any that's going to come through in the comments, last couple, obviously he's given us his time, but he might need to shoot. So
I saw somebody talk about whether because of Neville and Carragher, whether more people admit to the clubs that they support, and I think that's really interesting. I think it's easier for pundits because they've played for the club, so it's kind of fairly obvious. And particularly if you're Neville and Carragher and you're kind of one club men, then that's fairly obvious. I think if you're a presenter, it's not disastrous, to be honest. I think it's always slightly harder for a commentator because they're the ones at the sharp end and commentating on every goal, free kick, penalty, whatever it is. So I think it's always harder for a commentator, unless they support someone who is, National League North, and they're never going to kind of commentate on them. So I think in the main, you can, depending on who you are, you can probably get away with supporting certain teams.
We've got a question saying, "Can you confirm who you support?"
I'm a Manchester United fan, but I've never hidden that really, and I was, I've grown up in Manchester. Well, I was born in Rochdale, and moved to South Manchester when I was 18 months too. So Manchester United were my local club. So if I'm going to grow up loving sport and watching sport, then that's you end up getting taken to it. So I got taken to United, got taken to watch Sale Rugby Union, so they're also my team. I go and watch Altrincham, who are a local team to me, because when United weren't at home, I'd go and watch Alty. So I don't have any problem with that. It doesn't. The more you work in sport, you can separate things really. And also, people always claim that a show might have an agenda against this or an agenda against that, but you have to remember that across Match of the Day 2, for example, there are probably 25 different clubs represented, right? Because you've got editors, directors, producers, assistant producers, editors. So it's very hard. You can't really be anti anybody.
I think BT Sport at the moment are against Arsenal. Being a Gooner, there's a lot of Barcelona and Bayern Munich smashing us at the minute. I'm like, why? Leave offers, leave offers. Do you feel that referees should have to give their verdict at the end of the game? Do you feel like we'd be getting into a dodgy territory if we did, or do you feel it's
I think the only problem with that is, and I do agree with the referees here, is that you'd only want to talk to them after they'd messed up. So you're unlikely to bring them out to go, my God, the way you play on, played advantage, it led to a goal. That was sensational. Well done. You'd only focus on it for their errors. I would like to see greater communication. I would like to be able to hear them and the VAR lot talking. I think the secrecy amongst officials is a bit patronising to football fans.
Yeah.
And I think it would help them a lot if they could talk. Oh, there you go. There's somebody who just said, I think it would help them a lot if we could hear some of their interaction. Because I tell you what, rugby union, rugby league, NFL, you can hear it, and it does make a difference. Does make a difference. And actually, we've seen it with the A League in Australia, and all of a sudden, might not agree with their decision, but at least you understand how they've reached a decision. And I just think it would help. But there just appears to be this way of treating football fans like idiots that they can't deal with honest conversations, and that's a problem, really.
How do you feel that this season will finish?
Well, at the moment, I think it will finish. When it finishes, I've no idea, but I think it will. Look, there's no there's a rush the lower down the football pyramid you go, because people will go out of business, and businesses will really, really struggle. So I think that is a problem. But at the moment, they don't have to rush higher up. They've still got time, so they can just got to take their time, haven't they? Really, that's all I can see. There's no need to rush a decision. Just keep talking and take your time, because we're in this situation for a while.
Cool, perfect. Do you shoot in London or in Manchester?
Manchester. NFL in London, Match of the Day 2 and 5 Live in Manchester.
If you ever need a runner, hit me up. Honestly, I want to get involved in that world so much. I know that someone's asking about how you stop yourself going overtime when discussing a certain match, and that's obviously been counted down in your earpiece.
Yeah.
I'd love to see the whole side and the creation of that. I just think it's, from what people see on screen to its form. I'm such a geek at that stuff, especially with being in the industry.
You rely on account, and you also judge. All right, if I go over on this chat, I'll cut back a chat on game 3, and we'll make it up there. So you try and build in buffers on the show, so that if you go over in one way, you can claw it back in another. But you always have someone counting in your ear.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. There's another one that's come through, which has just said, on your wiki, it says that you're a Hull fan, so you need to change it.
I know, I'm not a Hull FC fan for rugby league, but you can't say I'm a Hull City fan. As I say, you can't support 2 football teams. You just can't do that. And he also says here, Kate, can you talk to your daughter, please? And for Jason, Walter Payton, obviously.
Do you know what? Right, sorry, you just brought up the Bears. They just signed Foles, didn't they?
Yeah, they have signed Nick Foles. Yeah.
So, how do you think he'll be?
So I think they've been quite sensible in that they've brought someone in who you don't immediately demand to be the number 1 quarterback, but could easily be the number 1 quarterback. So if they brought in someone like Cam Newton, injury permitting, you're going, Cam Newton's going to be your starter. But I suppose in this sense, what you're saying is, we've got someone in, he's been a backup, he's won a Super Bowl, he could help Mitch Trubisky, but if Trubisky has an awful pre-season, Foles can do the job. If Trubisky gets off to a decent start and then falls off a cliff in week 3, Foles can do a job. So I think they've managed it. I mean, I think there's lots of things they've done wrong, but I think in the main, they've managed it sensibly, that puts enough pressure on Trubisky, but not too much, and doesn't put pressure on Matt Nagy to go, I've got to make this quarterback that we brought in to be our starter. So I think it has kept their options open.
Rather an astute signing then.
I think, isn't it? Yeah, an astute signing rather than, as I say, rather than if they tried to get Cam Newton or well, can't think of anybody else, or Teddy Bridgewater maybe, and it would have been right. You're going to have to start them. So I think they've got someone who can be a starting quarterback, but can also help Trubisky.
Perfect. I've taken up enough of your time, and I've thoroughly enjoyed everything.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
Chatted about. Thank you for doing that.
Thanks
and who knows, before the NFL season, maybe another chat. And I'm serious about that runner thing. Honestly, I'd love to.
I know you. This whole thing was just to try and get a job. Was that it? Is that what it was about?
This is my CV.
Yeah, I know. Good stuff.
Honestly, I wanted to reach out because as a presenter, the way that you do it across all different platforms and your natural style, it is an inspiration.
Appreciate it.
I respect it, and for getting me into a sport like NFL, because now that I get it, I absolutely adore it. So,
our pleasure. Our pleasure. All right.
You
cheers,
take care.
Ben.
Have a good evening and stay safe with your family.
Take care.
Take care.
Cheers,
bye.
Ben. See you. Bye.
There we have it. Chappers, thank you for everybody who were getting involved. Sorry if I couldn't give any of the questions that you'd put through. What time are we on? That's all good, yeah. All questions firing through, and obviously what I wanted to ask him as well. So if I got to ask you questions, quality, if I didn't, apologies about that. But thank you everybody for tuning in. I've got one more chat coming up, which is going to be with Matt Bowman, who is the lead singer of the Pigeon Detectives. That's going to be starting at 7. Also, if you want to check any of my previous chats, I spoke earlier with Clayton Donaldson. I think he's in the chat as well. Thank you for your natter earlier, cuz. And then also I spoke with a DJ and booker, David Kiss, from New York, a club called House of Yes in NYC. That was amazing. So check those out, and then all the talks that I've been doing, they get uploaded onto YouTube, shared, sent out, what have you, so you can catch up on them. Again, thank you for all feedback coming through. Massive respect to you all. I'll see you on the other side for my chat with Matt. Peace.